Hello and welcome to the Solo Roleplayers podcast. Today on the show, I have another fantastic guest and a guest who makes another actual play podcast. And it's been a little while since I've had another actual play podcaster on the show. From the fantastic Starforged show Left Behind, Midnight Jester, welcome to the Solo Roleplayers podcast.
Definitely glad to be here.
It's excellent to see you here on the show. I've been really enjoying a lot of Starforged content of late, and it's been making me itch to get back to Starforged. But yours is one of the newest actual play podcasts that I come across in general, let alone Starforged content. And I want to talk to you a bit about how you got into solo roleplay, how you got into Starforged. But first, as always, there is always a story. How did you discover RPGs at all?
So it's kind of all intertwined in a way and a little bit multifaceted. As far as like RPGs specifically, it wasn't any one big moment. It was a lot of little moments at first that eventually added up. So this goes back, like I've been doing it for many, many years now. The earliest that's at all associated with RPGs would be like about like the age of 10, I would say. And I'm 37 now, so it's been quite a while. But first exposure would have been, I went to a summer camp every summer, and among many other things, one of the things that happened there was the counselor for our bunk this one year, he brought in a bunch of D&D books. I have no idea what edition. I would have been way too out of the loop to have any concept of even editions of an RPG at the time. That would have meant nothing to me. And I didn't even learn it then. Like, I do not consider D&D my first RPG experiences, like certainly not the first game I played. But he brought in these books that I found so intriguing. In particular, he had some like arms and equipment guide or something. I have no idea what book that was specifically, but I just remember all of these like hand sketches of all of these different types of swords and pieces of armor and stuff. And mind you, at that point, like my level of understanding of weapons was like Ninja Turtles. Like I thought about like a sword, not like a bastard sword versus a falchion or a scimitar or any of that. Like this was a level of detail and like depiction that alone was probably intriguing to me. And like he started making characters with some of the other people in the bunk. I was, to my memory, not one of them. I don't think he ever made a character with me. I just kind of watched from afar and was fascinated by this idea. No real idea what was going on. It wasn't him that actually taught me anything, as it turned out. One of the other friends I had in the bunk, also, you know, some 10-year-old, he had been that like one step closer to D&D in the past, and like had what he thought of, like he thought he knew how it worked, kind of. And I remember doing this like just walk all around the campsite with him at one point, doing basically just free roleplay, like no system or anything, just improvising, more or less a choose your own adventure kind of thing. Like I would tell him what I wanted to do and he'd ask me follow-up questions and he would just determine what happened. No system. Neither of us really knew exactly how D&D worked, and no concept of like a D20, nothing like that. Just
to stop you there for a sec, because that is something I hadn't actually thought of, but there is something so natural in that, in play, and especially in children, you know. And I watched my son, and he did get RPGs sort of, like he drowned in them a little bit, you know. Over the last few years, they've been in the house and part of my life and therefore part of his life.
Out of curiosity, did he know about RPGs outside of you first, or like is his first exposure to RPGs through you?
That's a good question. It's probably a bit of a mix. I mean, we played a lot of board games. I come from board games more than RPGs, actually, from a few years ago. And I think it was about the same time he started being introduced by me. We didn't actually play stuff together necessarily, but he started listening to the show and then sort of asking about what's going on. And at the same time, his mates at school started playing DSA, if you're familiar with that.
Das Schwarze Auge, yeah.
And they started sort of playing that and a little bit of D&D, and then he went and got the D&D books and did that exact same thing where I would go into his room and the page was open to all the sketches of the weapons, you know.
The artwork is very intriguing at first. Like if you don't know anything else about it, there's just the art draws you in.
Yeah. And then from that point, before he learned how to play, we would be at restaurants and stuff with, you know, family, friends and whatever, and he'd be hanging outside away from the boring adults with his mate doing exactly what you are talking about, just saying, okay, so there's a big wall and there's spikes at the top. Like, what are you going to do? You know?
Yeah. I mean, that first exposure was so basic level. Like, neither of us knew what we were doing. It lasted maybe 30 to 45 minutes at most. I just remember at the time, up until that point, I had played a lot of video games, but no RPG video games. It was mostly like platformers and maybe a beat 'em up or something like that. So like my game vocabulary was very different. So when he asked me the very like simple, like basest level of role-playing kind of question when I attacked a monster, and he was like, okay, where do you try and hit it? And I was like, what? Like I can decide that? That makes a difference? That was that first kind of big like, oh, there's something here that I really liked the way that felt. And like that was the first just kind of the agency of it really drew me in, even though it was at this point, like that's so low rent that's the tiniest little amount of agency. Like it, but that first little glimpse of it was what drew me in first.
In saying that though, that tiny amount of agency back in the day, you and I are the same age. I'm 37 as well.
Okay.
Back in the day, any agency at all, I mean, even the tiny bits of agency that you got in video games felt empowering. Like you remember looking, Ocarina of Time or whatever, and you could see Death Mountain over in the distance. You're like, I can actually go there. You know?
I did used to think that it was one of the coolest things about that game that you didn't have to do them in the order, forest, then fire. Like the first time that I went to fire first or something, and I was like, ooh, you respect, like I was able to break the flow like that. That was really, I'm glad they validated that.
But I think Breath of the Wild changed that, but that's a whole other podcast.
Right, and way later.
Yeah, but I think that agency, like it was the illusion of agency, right? Like, yeah, you could choose sort of which way to go, but when you got to the fence, there was one way to get over the fence. And if you didn't have the item that you needed to get from the, whatever.
They're still the one dictating what verbs you really have.
Exactly. And so therefore I can really see, even though you say it wasn't really any agency that you had in this role playing that you were doing, still compared to what else was available at the time, which was books, choose your own adventure, maybe, and video games from the 90s, like that's a huge amount of agency. And you can actually think, is there a creative way or a cool way that I can get around this problem?
Yeah, and similarly, I know I had read at least a choose your own adventure book up until that point. So like there's kind of a framework for that, but as you just said, like your choices are very, very limited. It's this, or it's not really respecting a level of detail to you making choices. It's what exact version of this story would I like to read today?
Exactly. Yeah. And more often than not, you just end up flipping back and, just getting through the whole content anyway, which was still exciting.
Actually, just recently, a friend, it was just a vehicle to give me a bookmark he wanted to give as a gift, but he gave a choose your own adventure book with it that I did successfully, never turned back along the way. It was a very dissatisfying book. I didn't die very quickly, but it was just not a very interesting story being told, but I at least did successfully commit to, there's no going back. If I make a decision, that's my story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's actually something I changed on over the years. As a kid, I used to constantly save scum and reload things, like I played Fallout 2 so many times, and I would always go down to this one place and pickpocket this one guy that I knew I could get a particular weapon from, and I would just, it was almost impossible to do. It would just be save, load,
Kind of skipping.
But then it changed.
I think kind of skipping ahead a bit in RPGs, that might be related to kind of the longer you play, the more you realize it's the failures and the partial successes are the most interesting thing. So like if you do the save thing and keep save scumming, like, yeah, you'll have good success, but was that the most interesting version of the story?
Yeah, that's it. And that is a key point. It is learning. I mean, it's not the same for everyone, I guess, but certainly the way I've played games over the years and moving from video games into board games into RPGs, how much that story is the interesting thing to me now.
Yeah. So D&D wasn't indeed the first one for me. Like that was the first kind of exposure, like almost like the inoculation to RPGs was through witnessing D&D kind of. But it would be a few more years before I'd say like I played an RPG for the first time. That would have come in middle school for me. And it was, again, I had a classmate whose brother played a lot of, had an older brother, kind of almost like a classic on-ramp to this sort of thing. Friend who had an older brother that ran games, and the game at the time, this was World of Darkness, and this would have been like 1999 or 2000, so like prime time for like this is what World of Darkness was for, was that this would have been shortly after like the first Matrix came out and movies like Dark City, like so ready to just view this kind of urban fantasy sort of lens on, like, you wanted it to be just a little bit of gunplay and darkness. And so he introduced me to this game, Werewolf the Apocalypse, and I still have visceral kind of feelings every time I see the cover with the like cardboard claw mark cut out, all of that. Like, this is the first time I truly played an RPG. And even then, it was really from a distance. Like, I knew about as little as necessary to just play, because the story intrigued me. At the time, I didn't really care about the mechanics at all. I don't remember making a character so much as they would ask a few questions and like kind of assemble a character for me out of what I said. And then in playing as well, the same sort of thing. Like, I just focused on what I wanted to do. I had no concept at all for what the dice result meant. Like, they would tell me like, okay, you rolled that, so, or you do that, so why don't you add up, your these two numbers on your sheet? You've got it in front of you. Count the number of dots, add them up, roll that many dice. And I would do that, but I'd hear them say words like botch or success, but like I didn't know how it actually worked. I just knew I was able to play in that little playground.
Yeah, I guess importantly, though, it doesn't actually really matter, right?
Certainly not at that stage, yeah. I was still able to engage with the narrative at the same level.
And I think that's probably a good thing to remember. Again, there are many ways to play games, and how you want to play them is how you play them, and that's great. But it's maybe not a bad thing to keep in mind and remember that the story that comes out, and especially if you're trying to guide someone else or get someone else into the hobby, which I see a lot of people talk about online. I've got my partner or my mum or whatever.
Yeah.
Not to get bogged down in those mechanics, because for that person, the interesting thing, at least initially, might well be that freedom and that freedom to make choice, and then they don't even need to know the mechanics. You just say, okay, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Roll those dice, that one and that one, the pink one and the blue one, and then say, well, you do it, but there's some complication, describe what happens. And that's, at its core, that goes back to exactly what you were doing as a 10-year-old out on camp, and that's a really, really great thing to remember if you do want to get people into the hobby and try and show them what an RPG is, when people constantly ask you, what is this thing you're doing all the time?
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's mostly noteworthy because it's so opposite of how I feel now. Like, I love mechanics now. I am all about system matters. I have so many RPGs, many of them I have no intent to play. I love reading an RPG to see, how does this do it differently? How do we take the same scenario and use mechanics to encourage different types of choices and stories? I love it all. I am way into mechanics. Then it didn't matter. And I definitely agree that when I'm introducing somebody to the hobby or to a game, I try and make the mechanics stand in the way as little as possible. Really drip feed, like, just the tiniest amount that you need to get going and let the momentum take over. Introduce things as they're necessary.
Yeah.
But like, for my own personal benefit, like, I'll read an RPG book for pleasure all the time. I love mechanics.
Yeah, and that sort of leads into the next thing to talk about, which is the beauty about solo RPG is that you can refine and tune the different quantities of things you like to really craft an experience that you want personally. You don't have another audience to worry about, which is one of the, if not the great thing about this hobby. How did you get from playing the narrative-driven games back in middle school to now discovering and getting into solo RPGs?
So certainly there was a large, many-year gulf of playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, like just playing more RPGs at first. To my editorial level of understanding, way too much Dungeons and Dragons. It's a game I'm kind of burned out on. There's nothing wrong with it, but I've explored that space. So I played a lot of RPGs and determined at the very least, like, this is something I really like. I branched out from there and started learning about new systems, and then determined, as I kind of mentioned, like, I enjoy just learning systems. So that kind of led me to participating in that kind of online space, trying to find out in places like the RPG subreddit, places like that, find out what are new games, what are new experiences I haven't had. And that was certainly something on one side of it. The other side of it was I spent a lot of time it's been a little while, but I used to have an active live stream pretty frequently where I did cello requests, actually. It was a music live stream, had nothing to do with RPGs. But over time, as I spent more and more time streaming and getting into it, I started branching out and incorporating new things. I would do mostly cello and then like an after party of some video games or something. And eventually these two ideas kind of converged into, well, I had certainly been looking to incorporate RPGs into the stream, but scheduling wise and everything, and just from a technical standpoint, it was way more of a hassle to incorporate other people into this. Possible, certainly, and I did an amount of it, but it complicated things a lot. And around that same time, I see this post on our RPG that introduced me to Ironsworn. And I don't think I actually read it the first time. I think I noted it and kind of moved on. But when I saw it again, I was like, you know what, this is intriguing to me. This idea of being able to play a game by myself, because at that point, I had no real awareness of the solo RPG scene at all. Of it, like obviously, Ironsworn was not the first at all to tackle this, but all I really knew of from solo RPGing at that point was very, very rudimentary, like GM simulators, like, you know, roll a D6. Is this a complete success, a partial success, a part, like very simple stuff like that. I knew that existed, but anything more complicated was beyond me. So, but I load up Ironsworn, and first reaction to it is just that for a free game, which certainly the original Ironsworn was, and to my knowledge still is, I had a very different expectation of what I was getting. When I first opened it up, it was with a very like scrutinizing kind of like, let's see what this is. How good can it be for free?
Yeah.
And then I immediately see like, oh, this is like very professionally laid out, and that PDF that you get is very thoroughly indexed. Like, it went well above what I was my expectations for a product that was free. So that helped keep me in. I read through it, and at that point, like I've certainly done an amount of Apocalypse World, other things that have kind of similar DNA to this sort of the types of moves that you make and the idea of a complete success, partial success, or a failure. I'd played similar games, and so as I'm going through it, it's all connecting very well. Like, oh, I understand how this works. And the idea that I could do this by myself was so intriguing that I think that very night for the first time, I was just like, I'm grabbing my dice. I got to do this right away. I got to see, like, does it play does it play the way I'm imagining it goes? Is it going to be smooth? Are there going to be hiccups? And spent a good 45 minutes to an hour just kind of improvising an idea, just pacing around in my kitchen, talking out loud to myself, finding like, no, it's going pretty smoothly. I think I could stream this. And yeah, so at first it was almost kind of just a solution to just content creation, which is, I hate that idea of like content, but
yeah,
it's just kind of, this is another thing I could do for entertainment. And it is something I enjoy, and I really wound up leaning into it and liking it.
We didn't go into it, but just for a bit of background, did you tend more toward the GM side or the player side in the end of your, not the end, but the middle part of your RPG career?
A little bit of both in a sense. I love GMing. I don't get to do it as often as I would like to. A lot of people have the forever GM problem of like,
I was just about to say.
Yeah, most people come at from the opposite point of view where like there's the one person who always has to GM. My friend group has consistently been, everybody has a game they want to run. We all love GMing. We all have games we want to run. If you want to run something, you got to fight for it. And so I've done it. I've not run a lot of games that I would say ran to a full-on conclusion and didn't just peter out for scheduling issues or things like that, or one person or another determined it wasn't really the system for them. I've done a few. I've rather enjoyed it. I want to do more, but I've mostly been a player just out of necessity.
Yeah, I guess that puts you in a really good standing then for the solo RPG experience, though, as well, where you do get that balance of both. You are still making decisions as a player, but you're doing the legwork, the creative legwork as a GM.
Yeah, in a number of ways, I would say that my experience continuing with solo RPGs has largely been a bit of a like solution to the problem of being kind of dissatisfied with my group play. Like I don't consider myself specifically a solo RPG player, and I mostly still play with a group. But I rather enjoy solo RPGs, and one of the things that I like about them is my group is a group of people that they're wonderful friends. I love them a lot. We have some very diverging opinions on what we want out of a play session, though. And so, like, I like the hang, and I'm going to keep being there for the hang, but us playing RPGs is not my most fun version of playing RPGs. Even though, all things being equal, I still think I would prefer a group, like a group RPG where everybody's on the same page, I think is still generally more what I'm looking for than a solo RPG. But the solo RPG for me currently very much fills in the gap of, oh, this is giving me the game I actually want, that actually has the right pacing and narrative.
And now.
Yeah, exactly. It's right now. I don't need to schedule it with people.
Yeah, that's another big thing. So you got into Ironsworn, then got into the free version. Just Ironsworn is free.
Well, there is a paid supplement for it, which I did wind up getting as well. There's Ironsworn Delve, which is relatively cheap, but it is paid. And then
I have that too.
It's got some really great ideas in it. I don't use all of them all the time, but some pretty intriguing ones. And it does what the name sounds like, where it has some rules to help try and make it like a little bit more dungeon crawly, still in that very vague, like you're going to be doing most of the narrative legwork yourself kind of Ironsworn way, but it's got a few rules that help with that sort of thing. And at that point, I had spent so much time enjoying it. Like, even if I hated that book, I would have paid for it because I was looking to support him as a creator, having just enjoyed the core game so much.
Sure. Yeah, Delve has come up recently in our Discord because I've been struggling with dungeons quite a bit of late, and trying to find what it is about a dungeon that I actually want. Like, what do I want out of a dungeon?
Yeah.
If it's not a board game, I mean, I've loved playing League of Dungeoneers, for example.
I've not done that one, but
yeah, big board game, lots of cardboard, but it very much blurs RPG lines. Like a lot of paperwork as well.
Yeah.
In a good way.
In that kind of like D100 dungeon kind of way, or not quite to that level? Okay.
Well, actually, I don't know. I haven't played D100.
Neither have I. I know a tiny bit about it, but I know there's certainly that whole genre of kind of solo game of just like solo, like not so much the stories, just as like this is the dungeon that you randomly and procedurally generate, and kind of your resource attrition along the way, which intrigues me, but not so much that I've done it yet. Like I'm still mostly looking for an interesting story more than a puzzle to solve.
Right. And that's sort of where I've been struggling, because I mean I like the tactile mechanical thing. And League of Dungeoneers is a board game, right? So you have a deck of cards, it has a certain number of rooms, the objective room is one of them, and it gets the dungeon feel by having absolutely everything randomized. So what enemies are in the room, location of the enemies, all that sort of stuff, and everything is a D100 percentage check, you know? And that's great. That's the moving stuff around, and if I move back here, then he won't be able to reach me, and then she can go in there, and, you know, like that stuff is all fun too.
Right, yeah.
When I'm doing solo, like pen and paper, note-takey, or recording is actually where I'm more struggling with the dungeon stuff, is trying to find what actually it is that I want. And so Delve did come up just yesterday in our Patreon Discord as a possible thing to look at.
Do you feel like the struggle is somewhat is the struggle that things like keeping it interesting and things being too much the same, or like could you elaborate on what is the struggle you've been finding with it?
Yeah, PJ's dungeon therapy session.
Look, I'm just as interested in getting to know about you as
Yeah. So I think that it's the combination of having maybe too much space to fill in details, but while also trying to do a procedural rote set of things, you know? Like I have more and more recently in solo play, especially the stuff I've been doing off mic, which I'm enjoying a lot. The procedural stuff is really helpful, right? Because when you're sitting down by yourself and maybe you're taking lots of breaks, which is also nice when you're not recording, but to just go through and say, okay, do this and then that and then that. And it really helps with that, the feel bads. When you get stuck sometimes and it feels bad, that's what I'm trying to avoid, and trying to tune the things that I'm doing and the way I'm doing it to avoid that sort of feeling. And so when it comes to the narrative, then you tend to get like, well, what is in this room? A trap.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of trap is it? A big trap. Okay, and then it's almost not sparking enough of those creative keywords or things that sparks the stories in your head or sparks the image of something in your head. It's sort of not enough to do that. And then the mechanics, because it doesn't have that extra narrative flavor, or I'm not picturing things, the mechanics then aren't as interesting because it can easily turn into I roll and miss, you roll and hit, I roll and hit, and it's just a attrition thing.
Right, yeah. That sort of thing that you describe is actually why one of the things that I like, it's not exclusive to Ironsworn and Starforged, but that I use a lot from that is when you describe, rolling up something like a trap and a big trap. I think, for me anyway, part of the problem with that would be the table is almost a little too related. I can get a lot more mileage when I'm struggling to come up with concepts with the much more broad things like the action and theme from like something that's completely, just noun adjective or something like that. That is not, it's a little bit off the course. So you have to figure out the puzzle of like, okay, how do I relate that? And that kind of tension between it not already kind of slotting into place and like you needing to move it there. I find it helps bring up my imagination a little bit better than just like just trying to figure out, okay, what kind of trap is this? For me would feel like basically the same kind of blank page. But if instead I roll up something like follow and fear, I'd be like, okay, well, what does that make me think of for a trap? Maybe this is a trap that that has to do, it makes me think of like will-o-wisps in a classic sense, where like you follow them into the dark woods and it leads you into this this troublesome area because you think it's good at first, but then by the time you look around, you realize you're now completely lost. And maybe it's a trap like that brings you into like, that's what I mean. Where it's just that little bit off course, that sparks way more ideas in me than if you just ask me like, what's a trap idea?
Yeah. A blade in the wall,
Right.
Is that the sort of experience you pull from Delve when you were using Delve with Ironsworn?
Not specifically. I don't, based on what you described, I don't know if Delve will necessarily be like the complete solution to what you're looking for. It might, but
yeah, I mean, the first thing is that I know what I'm looking for. That's always
right. Yeah. Right? Like it'll have procedures, but largely in that same way, like dungeoneering in Delve is kind of on the same level of detail as something like when you're doing like an expedition in Starforged. It's kind of like it'll have a little bit more to it. It'll have a little bit of, and a lot of Delve's ideas wound up in Starforged, which is part of that.
Interesting. Let's talk about that in a sec.
Yeah. So like you'll have like when you're dungeoneering and using the Delve rules, you'll have like a site like domain and theme, I think is what they're called, where there'll be times that you're rolling on tables that help inform like this is the type of room I'm in because this room is more influenced by there's an underwater cavern, so this one's influenced by the stalactites or whatever. It'll have some tables of stuff that might be relevant. It's that kind of idea where those will influence your journey, but it's certainly not going to be like specific details like you have a trap here. At the closest that'll come to that is like there's a peril and you can roll on this table to get some ideas on what that peril might be, or hey, here's an actual like specific beneficial thing. There's stuff like that'll come up, but it's still very broad strokes and it's still very Starforged in the you're going to have to make a large leap yourself in the creativity. It'll just give you some creativity sparking tools.
Yeah. Speaking of Starforged, then, were you continually playing Ironsworn then when Starforged came out and you sort of moved on to it, or how did that happen?
I don't remember the exact timetable of it. I've basically played the two of those games in 3 main chunks, if you discount my quick little trial version before I streamed it the first time. The first one was right before I started streaming, and I was trying to think of what is the story I want to tell, doing a little bit of the world building beforehand and not doing it live. I had a couple of ideas on like what's the bigger vow that I want to go for. And I had one kind of relatively generic fantasy one in mind that was like, okay. But then it hit me at one point as I was thinking of it, what does this game do? What does it push you towards? And I realized like okay, this is a game that wants you to kind of wander from place to place. Certainly if you're doing it solo, presumably on your own, maybe with some companions or something, solving people's problems or your own problems. But this works very well for kind of a lone wanderer, maybe getting into some scrapes every once in a while. And when I kind of put it out like that, I realized that actually fits very well without changing anything to another genre I really like, which is Wild West stuff and Weird West. Like if you have a little bit of magic in there. So the very first game I did, I was, I suppose, technically hacking the rules, but barely. All I was doing was really changing the coat of paint on top. I didn't change any mechanics. I just recognized that, if I'm making a ranged attack, it'll work with the same principles, but instead of a bow and arrow, it's maybe a gun. It can deal the same kind of damage. That doesn't matter in a game like Ironsworn. It's just how much narrative effect is it having.
Yeah, sure.
And so I did a first game that was relatively short-lived just because I was still learning the system and kind of died relatively quickly. I was a little too hard on myself. But did a YouTube series of that that was in the Weird West that was solo. Took a long break, did some other things. Eventually did a co-op game with my girlfriend at the time that was a lot more just the standard Ironsworn assumptions. That one ran longer and was interesting to kind of do a co-op experience, which I had up until that point never done. Then a long gap. I don't remember if Starforged came out while we were doing that or maybe afterwards, but there was certainly a long gap between that series of videos and now, like many years. Like I read Starforged a long time ago and did a tiny bit that I didn't record, but I learned very quickly that even though I'm having a lot of fun with the game, if I don't have a recording or some kind of idea that there's an audience that could even potentially be watching, I stopped doing it pretty quickly because it's hard work. Yeah. Like it's hard to find that motivation to like, I am going to do this specifically right now. Like it's very rare that I'm going to do that. But if I have the understanding that I need to make one of these once a week because even one person is listening to it, even if they don't, like as long as I think that way, then I'll make one once a week and I'll actually have fun, which is good. Like I'm looking to have fun, but I need to trick myself into having fun.
This is my exact experience of everything I've ever done creatively. But
yeah, it's like that's why I record it is like, yeah, audience is nice. And I hope as many people listen to it as possible. Like I love the feedback and I love knowing that people are hearing it, but it's really just a trick to make sure that I play the game.
Yeah. And then talk to me about Left Behind, because I came across Left Behind. Actually, it was the cover art that caught me on Reddit at some stage, and we started talking about the cover art because I just saw it and I loved it. I thought, oh, that looks awesome. That's something I'm into. I could already get sort of an aesthetic feel, or at least felt like I hoped I could get an aesthetic feel for what the show would be like looking at that cover.
Yeah, that was my hope anyway. The cover art was certainly one of the last things I did. I had already recorded I think I had 4 episodes in the bag by that point before I launched. Cover art was just sort of a last, like right before I finally launched, I was kind of tidying up the details of, obviously this podcast should have an image, little stuff like that. And I knew that when I started playing Left Behind, that one of the big things that I wanted to explore a little bit differently is both of the games of Ironsworn I had done up until that point, they leaned a little bit into the kind of like gritty, like not full on grim dark kind of style or anything like that, but it definitely leaned towards like, I really grind into the dirt. These are people that are almost in that OSR kind of way. Like let's see this person fail and like really give them their punishment. And I wanted to not do that this time. I was thinking for sci-fi, since neither of those games were Starforged, was the first time I was really doing that. I thought about sci-fi and I thought of how like colorful and like vibrant it can be. It made me think of like, I think my first touchstone was like Guardians of the Galaxy. That is like such a technicolor world and it's filled with like, yeah, bad stuff happens, but it's defined by all these moments of awesome, of people really succeeding and doing these cool set piece sort of stunts. And so I started putting these ideas together into what I described in the podcast and in general as like, I want this to feel like what I feel like when I'm looking at a prog rock album cover, where it's just like, whoa, anything could be happening here. This could incorporate anything. And I want it to just be cool. Yes, there are moments of hardship in that game, but I'd like to see this person succeed and try things that are like, oh my God, how is it gonna pull that off? And the answer is because I'm in control of how bad it gets when it goes wrong. But like, I want to see this character doing cool things, not struggling to do regular things.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's nice to have a really intentional approach to that then, and especially you can have different approaches to different games as well, both how much you're leaning into narrative, how much you're leaning into mechanics, all those kind of things. And there are enough games for us all forever already, even if another one wasn't ever released.
Oh, absolutely.
But what does it look like? So you started off doing YouTube streaming. Now, is Left Alone YouTube as well, or is it predominantly a podcast?
I do have the
Left Behind.
No worries. I do have the episodes, like they show up on my YouTube page as
the
just,
same as me.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't have any video to it. It's just, here is the art while you listen to the episode. I had certainly some people could see me on YouTube, so I figured like the other series are on there, might as well have this one here. But I've definitely thought of it as a podcast first.
Why did you want to go to a podcast from YouTube then? So
this was the big change, really. The first two games that I did were live streamed on Twitch, completely unedited. I posted the end results on my YouTube page, but there was no editing whatsoever. It was very fly by the seat of my pants. Like, you got all of my awkward pauses, all of my thoughts. And this time there were a couple of reasons I didn't want to do that. The first was that I knew that I was not looking for live feedback, and so the live element wasn't really, it was kind of pointless. It's also that puts this gate in front of when people can participate, of they better discover you at the right time to be there. Most people are going to engage with it as a recording anyway. So I was like, I don't know that I want to do this live. I want to experiment with an edited version where I tighten it up a little bit more, try it in this form factor, but importantly, not tightly edited. Anybody who listens to the show will recognize I do still try and leave in as much as possible, like the thought process. I'll take out things that are annoying to listen to, like exceptionally long pauses or, breath noises, things like that, as best as possible. Which, speaking of, there was a former episode where somebody was talking about the just grueling nature of taking out breath noises and mouth noises and stuff. And you said at the time that you had some tricks on that I have been eager to. I want this. I want this secret lore, because yes, it is. That is so much time editing this. It's not editing for content much. It's just editing for quality is most of my time.
Yeah, but that's, as far as I'm concerned, that is absolutely time well spent.
Oh, yeah.
And I certainly notice it when I listen to your show or when I listen to other shows I consider high quality. I do notice that work that goes into it. But I think it is important. And one of the reasons that I stuck with your show then, after just the art.
Oh, that you did stick with. I thought you said that you are stuck with my show. Like, yeah, I've got you bound up now. I'm afraid you're stuck with Left Behind.
No, is that you do, like, keeping that mix of the decision space in there, I think is so important. And that's something I've talked about it with multiple guests already on the show. And maybe it's I know it's not just me because we talk about it, but certainly is me, that I want to hear how the cookie crumbles. No, sausage is made.
All that
I want to hear
how all the foods become food.
All the foods become foods. I want to hear that stuff, because if it's just narrative, that's cool, but then you're competing with lots of other narratives, right? And if it's just mechanics, that's cool if I want to get a feel for what a game is like, but then I don't need to continue to listen or watch something like that.
Yeah,
and so
that's the real reason.
Important balance that you strike.
It's the real reason why I do it in the way I do, of like edit to the degree that I do and leave in as much as it is. It's really just I'm making a podcast that I want to listen to. Like I've listened to a lot of actual plays, not a lot, but every once in a while I do listen to some. Usually when I'm learning a new system and I'm intrigued enough, sometimes it informs whether or not I buy something. Is if I'm kind of on the fence, I'll try and listen to people playing it and be like, okay, does this game seem to be interesting in the ways I think it is, or does actually playing it kind of like, oh, this is just another one of these? So I listen to actual plays in that way, and what I've wound up determining over time is that, yeah, like I'm most interested in seeing, like, how does this actually play? So when I made one, I decided that what was most important to me is to really facilitate that. Like I know that I'm not interested at all in like the like adding in sound effects or music or anything like that. I really am just trying to like I want this is what playing it is like.
Yeah.
As best as possible. And like obviously no shade on adding in sound effects or music. I know you've done that. It's not like distracting to me or anything like that. But for my own preferences, like what I'm most interested in is just almost pretending that I'm just there in the room, kind of. And so I was like, I don't need sound effects or music. It's just going to be me and all of my awkwardness, and moments of what I really enjoy most when I listen to it. I like listening to the moments of when I don't know something at first, like where there's a bit of a, like, I'm just kind of doing rote procedures. And then when something finally hits me of, oh, I know how to make this idea connect to this one in a really cool way that's going to make a great visual. Like, now I know what I'm doing. And like, I try to leave in the journey to get to that point.
Yeah. And that's hearing or seeing that's when the magic happens, you know? Mm-hmm. And you can almost, when it's so raw and honest like that, because when you do a podcast like we do, like you do, where you are being honest about the struggles even, often, and I don't know what a cool idea, what could be happening there, I don't know, and then it clicks like that, you feel that personal journey that the player is going through, and yeah, it's a lot of fun to listen to as an outsider, but I also am right there with you. I love listening to my stuff from way back that I've forgotten all about what happened and thought, oh, that's how, I know where the story went now, and I'm like, oh, this is where my group is. But I listen back and I'm like, oh, that's where that idea came from. That's really, really cool.
I think it's also important for like, every once in a while I'll talk to somebody like my girlfriend now. I introduced her a little bit to Starforged. Like we had a little side thing where we made our sector, and it came out of like, I would talk about this solo thing that I do, and she's played RPGs, but definitely never any solo stuff, and really didn't understand like how does this work? Like, how do you do this for yourself in a way that is surprising? Like, really didn't understand the core concepts. And I feel like leaving in that kind of moment of representing, like, this is the experience of playing a solo RPG, is this not really having it, and then these sudden surges of aha, that like, I want to represent that to really show you, like, this is why you might enjoy playing a solo RPG. Because as you said, if you're just doing like nice, tightly done narrative, like, you're competing with, like, I can watch a movie, I can watch a TV show, all sorts of things that are going to give you very satisfying narratives.
Yeah, fantastic. Midnight Jester, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I feel like I'm cutting it short now. There's so much more to talk about. On a little bit of a time crunch today. I have had some people ask me about being interested in doing extended interviews and additional interviews over on the Patreon stuff, so that might be something that we can talk about later.
Yeah, certainly open to it.
Tell people where they can find your fantastic Starforged actual play show, Left Behind.
Yeah, so it is indeed on it's on all your podcast platforms. It is Starforged Left Behind. You can also, if you're having trouble finding it, because I'll be the first to admit, this is not exactly a largely followed show. Like, if you're looking to support a small time creator, this is the one for you. So if it's not coming up in your search feed, you can also go to leftbehind.transistor.fm. That'll have the links to all the places that you'll be looking for. And I truly appreciate, like, I'm at the level right now where every new viewer or listener is something that, like, I can see it in the data. So if it's very beneficial. I love feedback that I get from new listeners. I hope y'all will check it out. Before you go, though, I did have one more thing I wanted to present. As I mentioned, I kind of got into this all by being a cello streamer, and I listen to your podcast all the time, and so I wanted to see if I could play your theme for you, on a very different instrument.
I'm stunned.
Obviously, a
Wow,
little bit
what?
adapted to be able to do it on one instrument rather than a few.
single
but,
instrument
Yeah.
with only 4 strings.
Yeah, exactly.
That absolutely made my week. Thank you so much for that. That now belongs to me, that recording,
Absolutely.
and you will be hearing it in the show, I'm sure. Midnight Jester, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to be here. I look forward to continuing to listen to the podcast in general and certainly how this episode came together.
Cheers.
See you.